Okay, now let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Tallink Product Group podcast. My name is Anna Albert, and today I'm your host. I'm super happy to have today with me Henrik Veromann. We used to work together at Boko as product managers. Hello, Henrik.
Hey Anna, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm super excited about the conversation we're going to have. And actually, the conversation we're going to have today about is going to be about burnouts. Henrik is a founder of Burnout HQ, a company that helps organizations and individuals to identify early signs of burnouts. And burnout is a very serious issue. According to Mind the Product statistics, 80% of product managers worldwide experience burnout at least one time. The question is how we can prevent it and also how we identify the early signs. Today, Henrik and I will dive deep into this topic. Are you excited, Henrik?
Absolutely, let's go. And thanks for having me.
Cool. But actually, before we dive deep into this topic, I really want to know about your journey. So, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. And so, as you mentioned, I'm the founder of Burnout HQ, which is an online platform helping both organizations and individuals recognize and address early signs of burnout. Before I founded this company, I worked as a product manager for quite some time. So most recently at Glia, where my main responsibilities lay with the front-end platform and also with mobile products. Before that, as you already mentioned, we worked together at Boko. And at Boko, besides being a product manager, I held a number of different roles. I started as an account manager. Then at some point, I wanted to move more into the technical side of things. So I started managing more technical projects, and then eventually graduated, so to speak, to product management.
Wow. Okay. But then I think we have many things in common because I'm still a product manager, hasn't founded anything yet. But actually, the question is what led for you to create Burnout HQ? And how was your personal experience shaped this mission of this company?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think one of the fundamental things was that I've always helped someone else do their thing, you know? So I've pretty much I've been one of the founding members of a startup before that as well, but basically pretty much all of my quote unquote career has been helping other people do their things. So I've been wanting for quite some time to build something from the ground up. So that's one side. Another side is that I really wanted to do something to help real life people, real life everyday people. So what I see with many let's say technology companies, but not only, is that they are mainly focused on B2B activities, and if not that, there are great B2C companies as well. But what are they really doing? Are they really helping everyday people? And this was just something that I wanted to do. And also, having gone through burnout myself, I couldn't help but starting to see certain patterns. I saw that most of what we call, or what they themselves call solutions, are actually not really solutions. They're more like damage control once something bad has already happened. Like once people are starting to feel burnout, or they're starting to feel that something's not really right. And I also realized that most of these again, quote unquote, solutions are focused on individuals. So meaning that me or you or whoever individually is to, I wouldn't say to blame, but responsible for burning out. And I also realized that most of these solutions are reactive. So there's not enough work done, in my estimation, about prevention. And like it's similar to if you're in business, it's similar to keeping a customer. So and versus acquiring a new customer. So it's much cheaper to keep an existing customer than to acquire a new one. And similarly, it's much cheaper, actually, if you think about it, to prevent burnout than to deal with the consequences. So basically, these are the reasons why I embarked, so to speak, on this mission to help to create healthier work environments where people don't need to hit rock bottom in order to, before getting help.
Okay. Yeah, I get your point that I think like retaining a customer is quite cheaper than acquiring a new one. And here as well, like preventing burnout is actually can be cheaper or like more healthy than fixing the outcomes of it. But then,
Exactly, and also like when you think of it in terms of your workforce, if you're an employer, if you're a leader, then it's much cheaper actually to keep an employee than recruit a new one. Like there's studies on it that show that replacing an employee costs anywhere between 30 and 200% of that person's annual salary. So, you might think that this is an outrageous number. It's really not when you think about the underlying factors. Like you need to consider recruiting, you need to consider expenses that are related to that. You need to consider onboarding the new person. You need to consider training. You need to consider institutional knowledge that leaves the company with that person. So it's I hear a lot from people that it's really easy for companies to replace people, and to some extent, I guess that's true, but it's also more expensive.
yeah, 100%. But then I also have like a very question that probably can be too personal to ask. So since you went through burnout yourself, how, like, if you can you share like what did you feel at that very moment, or like which signs have led to it, and
Mhm.
then how you basically survive it?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to share that. So I guess we need to start from the symptoms in general,
Mm-hmm.
which are basically, you can categorize them into four different categories. Like there's mild symptoms, moderate, heavy symptoms, and severe symptoms. It's very difficult to really understand when you are in these first two phases of symptoms. It's really difficult to understand if it's really burnout or if it's something else. So, for example, in the case of mild symptoms, you might start getting like headaches, which you didn't have before. You might start feeling drained, which you may mistake it as being just you get a headache, like
Mm-hmm.
but um, you need like a really deep understanding of the problem, and also you need to have very high self-awareness in order to associate these mild or moderate symptoms with actual burnout. So, and I didn't do that. So the first thing that I remember in the case of myself is that I started to feel constantly exhausted
Mm-hmm.
for a very long period of time. Now, I remember having, going to vacation, and I thought, okay, then I just need a vacation and that's it. But then you come back, and then the symptoms come back, almost immediately. There was recently a great study done on this as well that showed that on average, it only takes maybe a couple of weeks after coming back from vacation when people start feeling the symptoms again. And, that makes it really difficult to kind of identify. But for me, again, personally, the time when I understood that, okay, like this is definitely something more, and it's definitely serious, was I remember this moment as it were yesterday. So the feeling basically was like, I remember being in some meeting or another, and basically I remember I had my laptop on my desk. I had the camera turned off. I was laying down on the floor because I couldn't move. I had, pain going through my entire body, and this was the moment when I realized that, okay, something needs to change. And at this point, I decided it right then and there. So basically, I left the job, and so I decided that it's very unlikely that the job would change, and so it seemed like the pretty much the only solution at the time.
Yeah, but also what I'm hearing, you basically also realized it too late. You had early signs, but then when was already not really manageable, then you finally took an action to leave the job. But then
Yeah.
it's funny, or like for me, it's very frustrated because a lot of product management is a very stressful job, and it like sometimes can be very overwhelming. And in the organizations that I worked with, I hear this phrase quite often from management: can you please keep us posted on your state of mind if you see some signs of burnout? But this always frustrates me so much because, well, how can I know? I think when I know and see them, that's already too late, isn't it? Probably because I am already having it in some stage, like that or another. So, what do you think are the earliest warning signs that people need to be aware about and start alarming basically about them?
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. So again, as I said, it's very difficult without having like pretty deep knowledge and pretty high self-awareness to understand like what these symptoms are and how they can be associated with burnout. But let's look into these symptoms. So as I mentioned, there are four. There are four categories of symptoms. So there are mild symptoms, again, such as headaches. Start getting random back pain. If I look back on my own experience, I started to get like abdominal pain, which came out of the blue. Then there's moderate symptoms, so something like insomnia. You start becoming more cynical. You start to detach from work, really. Also, on the emotional side, you may feel exhausted. You may be frustrated. You may start feeling guilty, actually, about yourself. Like, what's the matter? Like, I didn't used to have those things. And many people start to actually blame themselves. Now, moving forward, then there's severe symptoms. It's so it's for me. This was place where I actually noticed it. So it can be, again, like very, very severe symptoms, such as, having full body pain. You may be trying to use unhealthy coping mechanisms in order to kind of push through the stress and push through the pain, so to speak. And then there is extreme symptoms, which, in extreme cases, burnout has known to lead to self-harm. You may start even getting like suicidal thoughts. So it's not something to take lightly. And there's not only the consequences are not only psychological.
Mm-hmm.
It was really interesting. Like, there was this study that came out, I think maybe just a couple of days ago, that showed that there's actually changes in your brain that occur due to burnout.
Wow.
Like, they had a control group who are healthy people. They had people who were struggling with burnout. So they had EEGs. They measured the brain activities of both of those groups. And it turns out like that burnt out people are weakening the circuits that control your focus, that control your decision making, and control your emotional regulation. So it's the talk that it's, I don't know, it's made up, or it's only psychological, or you need to be more resilient, or whatever. Like, it's bullshit. Like, I don't give me that. It's not real.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I never thought that burnout can be physical before actually this conversation right now we have. I think it's also probably connected to the fact that I haven't had burnout in my life, but a lot of people around me did. And somehow I always associated it with something psychological, not really like physical. So it's quite a big discovery right now for me, for sure. But then also, like, you know, I'm from Ukraine, so post-Soviet culture, and that's how I was raised. And I remember when I started to work in Estonia, and I was already mentioning that some people and some of my colleagues are taking sick leaves because of burnout. My family was shocked because, well, some people or like some nations were not really be raised to be weak, but it's not really about weakness. So a lot of people, I think, are also afraid to admit that they have a burnout because, well, you would need to show your vulnerability, or like honest, like to show the world like what you're feeling. um what is your, like, did you also saw this happening sometimes with people, or like what is your opinion on this?
I am, well, I've also heard ideas like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
well, also Estonia is a post-Soviet country, and like, especially coming from an older generation, it's you oftentimes you get the sentiment that life is supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's necessarily the case. But it's also, in my opinion, has to do a lot with science evolving over time.
Mm-hmm.
So when we take, for example, other conditions such as depression, such as anxiety, some time ago, you weren't able to diagnose those conditions accurately. What you would hear a lot is that, like, there's something going on with my nerves. Like, help me do something, or take something that would calm my nerves. Like, they would put all of these really different conditions into one, and they weren't really able to make a distinction. Now, another thing which has changed a lot since then, since the time of our parents' generation,
Mm-hmm.
is that the type of work that we do has changed a lot. Like, there is very little, or not very little, but compared to let's say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever, there's comparatively little physical work. What we do mostly is knowledge work, and it affects you in different ways. It affects your psychology in different ways. So it's very easy to sort of when your experience as an employee or as a worker goes back 20, 30 years, it's quite easy to say that, oh, what are these snowflakes talking about? Like, grow a pair and be more resilient. But it's, if you think about the work that we do today, as you mentioned, product management and is very demanding. Of course, there are other roles, other jobs in other fields that are also very demanding. But let's think about it, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I remember, like, as a product manager, it's not uncommon that you have maybe 5-6 projects that you have ongoing at the same time, maybe even more. You may be doing discovery work for one thing, then you may be writing some documentation about the other thing, then you have a couple of projects that are in active development, then you have something that you're doing, you're doing monitoring and all that stuff. So you're doing all these things at the same time, and so it's no wonder that it's becoming increasingly difficult to successfully manage all those things. And it's not a personal shortcoming. It's the issue of the system, let's say.
Yeah, I think you summarized it very well. Sometimes the amount of work that I can do, like within an hour or a day, is just too much, and then the new things might come, and that's basically, I think, where it becomes like super overwhelming to navigate it. Of course, as PMs, we always taught to say no, but then there are some things that can't be said no to, and then it basically drags, and becoming a huge bomb that can burst pretty much any second. But then also, our listeners are going to be probably some product leaders as well, and then I kind of feel that it's also up to the management and leaderships to help individuals and themselves as well to manage their workload better, or like do some other things to prevent burnout. Do you think there are such things, and if yes, then what are they from their like organizational perspective?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a good way to slide into this topic would be to actually go over some of the factors that are that have been identified as causes for burnout. So they can be divided into subgroups. There are two main ones, which are organizational factors, and there's also individual factors. So starting with the organizational factors, you have workload, self-explanatory. You have emotional regulation, which means pretty much that you're forced to do a brave face, or you're forced to smile through very challenging situations. It may be for me personally, because I've outside of IT, I've also I've been working for 20 years. I've had many different jobs, and one of them was actually working in a mall for a big telecom. So I remember that I had to always keep a smile on my face. Pretty much doesn't matter if I'm being treated rudely or I'm being unfairly accused of something. Like, I have because of that experience, I have tremendous respect for people who are actually frontline workers, and like I know that it's not easy. You need to regulate your emotions a lot. But anyway, moving forward, there's lack of autonomy. Again, pretty self-explanatory, meaning that you're not basically able to set up your work or do your work in an autonomous way, in the way that works for you. Then there's ambiguity about role expectations. Again, meaning that it's not really clear what's expected of you. Then there's unfair treatment. Maybe you feel that you're getting unfair treatment. You may feel that your colleagues are, for some reason or other, getting upper hand. And then there's lack of social support. What you also mentioned earlier, it may be from your manager or the company leadership in general, but it can also be from your colleagues that you work with every day. Like, of course, we all hope that that's not the case, but the reality shows that it does happen. And last but not least, on the organizational side, there's work-life imbalance. So basically, what that means is that oftentimes you're expected to be available all the time, and so that you don't really get the chance to detach and work on your hobbies or whatnot. And then, as for the individual factors, you may look into personality traits, such as, for example, if you are higher on trait neuroticism, then it doesn't really help with burnout. So you may feel a lot more anxiety. You may be a lot more emotionally sensitive. And so that makes it harder to cope with job demands. And but at the same time, if you, for example, if you are as a person more organized or more outgoing, then that, on the other hand, helps to shield you against burnout.
So when it comes to the individual factors, I had my own assumption that definitely there are some personality types that are more likely to have a burnout than others. And based on what you said, not that I'm trying to say that somebody is better than other. I think it sounds horrible, but like the fact that we are all different and we all have our own personalities. Some people have more anxiety than others, and so on. So is it true that there are some people that actually need to be more cautious about that? And basically, like if you have more anxiety and generally have that traits, then you have to prioritize basically education about this topic and things like this. Can we also say like that?
To some extent, I think we can, and one of the things that that's kind of for me a fundamental thing is that we cannot, as you said, we cannot have like we need to look things on an individual level. So you cannot say you cannot put everyone in the same basket, so to speak. So in that sense, absolutely, and like there are of course things that you can do, and we can get into that later on. There are of course individual things that you can do in order to protect yourself. Like if we talked about workload, for example. So there are things that you can do to that can help you prioritize things more effectively. There are things that you can do to make sure that your goals are set up in a proper way. Like, of course, there's things that you can do, but what I feel we're not doing at this point in time, or at least not nearly enough, is looking at the organizational factors and, first of all, understanding them in a way that would we're not understanding the factors that are present in your organization specifically that are contributing to burnout. And what we're also not doing, because understandably it's very inconvenient and it's very expensive and it's very difficult to change an organization, even more so if it's a large organization, but it needs to be done. So let's take one example. There's a lot of talk about workload. So let's try and look into it a bit more closely. So you might think about it just in the terms of X amount of projects that you may be doing at the same time. And you may have 5 or 4 or 6, that doesn't matter. Really, the number doesn't seem to be that big. But when you look behind the actual number of projects or whatever the things that you do on a regular basis, then there's much more to it. So one of the things that has changed a lot over the past probably 20 years or so is the communication and the prevalence of really low frequency asynchronous communication channels like email, Slack, you have Teams, you have a million different kinds of asynchronous communication channels. And what's happened is that the majority of the work is actually communicating in those channels. Like, you don't necessarily get enough time for doing actual deep, meaningful work, because when we take that you have these projects, all of this communication is going back and forth. I may have this project and I need your help, so I message you on Slack, hey Anna, can you help me with this and this, or what do you think about that? You reply to me, and then we move the conversation forward like that. But you think about that, you probably have, at least in IT, you probably have 10, 20 of those channels or communications going on at the same time. So and it's not up to the individual, and you as an individual, you cannot say that, well, I'm just not gonna read my email then, I'm not gonna reply to you in Slack, because most of those conversations have at least some degree of urgency. You need to move things forward, because that's how things move forward. That's how you complete the project. But as an individual, you cannot come out of this. It needs to be an organizational change. And again, it's very difficult to do. It's very expensive to do, but it needs to be done, and it needs to be a top-down approach. It needs to be the leadership. It needs to be the management that says that, okay, this is not how we're going to be doing things from now on. I don't know what the actual solution is, because each organization, as each individual, is different. And you need to take that into account. So I cannot tell you, and like Burnout HQ doesn't tell people or organizations what to do. What we do is we point out where the issues are, and we, in case of organizations, we work together with the organizations to help them fix those things.
Yeah, I actually quite agree with this point that majority of communication right now happens in all these asynchronous channels. I personally can have sometimes day where I have, in the best case, 15 minutes break between the meetings, but all the other 7 hours, 45 minutes, I have meetings. Uh, and then sometimes I actually need to do the focus work. But since I get used so much to text or have a chat or sort out things in the meetings, and then I finally have a blocker in my calendar to focus on something, I'm like, actually, I can do it right now. I would use this time to like breathe out, because there was so much that I need a break of after all these chats and conversations. But I heard some companies are like having these focus times on specific days when everyone like now have meetings, or not having conversation in Slack. I talked to some group product managers, and they were always saying that they check their emails or chats in the beginning or in the end of the day, and they keep it very, very strict. I think you're right. Like, it's very dependent from the organization to organization.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But the thing is that it needs to be an organizational level change. Like as an individual, you cannot do, you just cannot make a decision that like, I'm not gonna use Slack. I'm not gonna read email, because it's baked in to the system. It's like very easy and cheap to implement, and that's how we're accustomed to do our work. And like, if you as an employee decide that I'm not going to be doing it, but you can't do that, because you need to collaborate with other people. Like, if you're a solopreneur, you can do that, like no dramas. But if you're a person who needs to collaborate with, as a product manager, you need to collaborate with the development team, you need to collaborate with designers, you need to collaborate with technical writers, so on and so forth. You just can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. But then also, I think we can of course impact some things in the organization we are working at by providing feedback and making a choice in which organizations we work at, by identifying those signs and so on. But I think still we are like a small needle in the huge stock of and pile. But what about individual aspect? Like, what I as an individual can do or pay attention to on those things, or and also like what I think hobbies helps a lot in life, and like having time on them. Maybe there are like some specific things we like everyone can do to help them with that.
Well, of course, like there's tons of things that can be done, and there's when you look at, for example, the health benefits that organizations offer, like feel free to add. But from what I can recall, like there's gym membership, very typical, or compensation for gym membership. You may have some I don't know, some mindfulness apps, some meditation apps. They might reimburse X amount of visits to a psychologist and all that stuff. And I mean, all of those things have their value. Like, there's nothing better to help with, cognitive decline, which will happen to people as they get older. There's nothing better to combat that than physical exercise, doing aerobic work, doing anaerobic work. Like, there's no question about that. This is something that helps. being mindful is something that helps. Learning to meditate, like if this is something that floats your boat, it's something that helps on the individual side. But these things have almost zero effect. And again, there's great research out on this topic. I think it was last year out of the university, out of Oxford University, that they studied, like, do those individually focused interventions, as they're called, do they, and if yes, to what extent do they affect preventing burnout? And the answer is it's almost zero. It's almost zero. Like, of course, like, I'm not saying don't meditate, don't do yoga, don't exercise, don't take a cold plunge every now and then. I'm not saying don't do that. Like, I mean, do all of that. But these things don't change the organizational aspects.
Like, a lot of people are very high achievers, and I also think that burnout in that case is more likely even to happen. But now, how can people reframe the mindset about success, productivity, and also the fact that so many things are dependent on the organization they are in? Because, I mean, I think if we don't tell organizations to change or like share the feedback, then nothing will, because they have been working like this for a while, and then things are just going on. Can we, as individuals, contribute to the organizations to start the change?
Absolutely, and this is the place where Burnout HQ helps individuals and organizations. The problem that I see a lot is that, like, of course, you have engagement surveys. You have like, which are sometimes more often, but typically they're once or twice a year. The problem with that is that it's not frequent enough, in the sense that you may, and it doesn't necessarily represent what people are actually feeling, because you may catch me at a bad time. Like, I may have had a bad week. Of course, it affects the scores. What we need to have is continuous self-assessment by the employees, and also feeding that information, of course, anonymously, so that people are actually free to express what they actually feel, and feed that to the organizations. There's also, I've heard, like, I personally haven't experienced, but that there are, like, more frequent these pulse surveys and all that. But the problem with that is, like, most of those are not really beneficial to the employees. They're there for the organization. They're, like, measuring engagement. In my opinion, it's not worthwhile, because if you have happy people, if you have people that are doing work that is meaningful, then engagement is a byproduct of that. Like, there's no need to measure engagement individually. And the one of the wonderful things that's happened to me over the course of launching Burnout HQ is that I get reached out to by a lot of people. Sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're ex-colleagues, sometimes, like, even most times, they're people that are, like, I didn't know that even existed. Like, they're people from all walks of life, from the other side of the world, and they share me their stories. And like, I remember a couple of those. So there was this girl from, I think it was I think she was from the UK or something like that, and she told me this story. So basically, she was at a pretty high level in an organization. So, and in a meeting together with all the managers and all the important people, one of the C-level executives said that it is okay to ask people to postpone their vacations so that we could deliver projects sooner. Now, if I were to be very generous and give the benefit of the doubt, and you might think that, oh, okay, maybe this company was struggling and maybe that was the reason for that. No, the company has shown growth over the past 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't struggling, nothing like that. It's just that was the attitude. And then to think that if the attitude is this, like, you cannot meditate your way out of this. Like, you cannot do yoga and then be resilient about the fact that your personal time is not valued and it's not respected. Like, it's mind-boggling to me how things like that happen. And it's not an individual case. Like, as I said,
Mm-hmm.
I get reached out to a lot, and people actually want to share their stories. And at some point, I'm probably going to start the series somewhere to share those stories. Now, we're coming back. I got sidetracked a little bit. I'm sorry.
No, no worries. Like,
So
if that would happen to me, it would be such a red flag.
But exactly. But you were asking about success and mindset and rethinking productivity and all that. So let's look into that. So for me, like, the obvious place to start is to look inward. So when we talk about success, you need to define it very clearly what success means to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what it's not what social media feeds to us as success. And I mean, your definition of success may be the same, nothing wrong with that, but the important thing is that you make it really clear what it means to you. If it means that you want to be hyper successful in a single domain, then go for it. Then nothing wrong with that. But for most people, what success is that they have enough resources to keep food on the table, roof over your heads. You have enough time to spend with your family, your loved ones. You have time to work on your hobbies. You have time to take care of yourself physically. So I think what a lot of people unfortunately don't do is that they don't set the criteria for success. And one of the reasons is that they don't want to set the criteria for failure, because who wants to do that? Who wants to fail? So that's one thing. You need to make very clear what success means to you. Now, the other thing you mentioned was about career.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is that career is a nice word. It's got a nice ring to it. But the fact of the matter is that most people don't have careers. The majority of people have jobs. Like, if you think about a career, and if you were to define what a job is something that you do in order to get paid. And the career was more like something that you would do even in the case where all your basic needs were met. So the majority of people don't, in my opinion, don't really have careers. They have jobs, and there's nothing wrong with that. And when you think about it, then having a sustainable career, like, okay, like what exactly does it mean? Like, does it mean that you are very, very successful in one domain, or is it, at least for me, as I have defined success for myself, is that my needs are met. I have enough time to work on my hobbies. I have good relationships. I have a chance to take care of myself physically, and so on. For me, it's not really the thing of being, very, very focused on one thing and working, I don't know, 80 hours a week on that. But that's just me.
Yeah, but I think it's very valuable that you shared your honest opinion and about this job and career difference. I have never thought about it, but now when you said it out loud, actually, I completely agree with you. I think probably you have a career now since you founded Burnout HQ. Am I right? But you probably had a job when you were product manager, or
Well, I would say that I don't know. Like I for me, at the place where I'm right now, I'm not even thinking about it in the term of a career. It's just, it's something that I'm passionate about. It gives me a lot of opportunities to do a lot of different things that I haven't really done before. I have, previously I hadn't developed anything. I hadn't really done any design or anything like that. I hadn't really done sales at this, this scale or like this type of sales, because as working as an account manager, of course you do sales, but it's more upselling. It's not like finding completely new customers. So I wouldn't even say that it's a career. Like I would call it a mission or something like that. But even that, I think, is sort of, it gets used a lot, this word. So it has sort of a, not the negative connotation to it, but I think it gets thrown about a lot, and so maybe it loses some of its
yeah.
the actual
I think
meaning.
sometimes it can be misused, but yeah, for you, I think it's exactly the meaning it has to have. And actually, I'm super happy and excited for you. Maybe a bit jealous, deep in my heart, but that's the honest reflection. I think.
Well, it's well, of course, thank you for that, and but I'm not ruling out definitely that I won't be, going back to work in another organization. Like if there is, if I find something that is really appealing and really deeply resonating. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with that either, and I'm definitely not ruling it out.
All right. I actually have last two questions I want to ask, and let's start summarizing it, because I think I personally learned today so much about burnouts, and also I really love the fact how scientific our conversation was, and at some places theoretical and some very practical and applied. Are there three advices that you can give to our audience that they can stick to?
You mean regarding burnout,
Yeah, yeah.
or in general?
I
Okay.
mean, you can go for general. It's suit me.
Well, let's see. Regarding burnout, Monitor yourself. And so it may sound like a cheesy sales pitch for people to start using Burnout HQ, but it really works. Like you, in order to catch this thing early, you really need to monitor yourself. You need to do it on a continuous basis, and so that you would know basically where the issues are. And it's for individuals, it's dirt cheap. It costs 99 cents a month, although it's billed annually, but it's a long problem. You cannot fix it in 1 month. But like, even if you don't have the means for that, no worries. We've also got a scholarship program. So if you don't want to pay anything, like, reach out to me personally, reach out to support, and we'll set you up. Like, you don't really have to pay anything if you feel that, or if you just cannot afford it. So that's one thing. Start monitoring yourself. You don't know what needs fixing, like, if you don't know it's broken. You don't know what you don't know. Another thing to recommend is for organizations to start listening to your people more. Again, I know that there are existing, surveys and questionnaires and all that. In all fairness, I don't think that's enough. And they are not, in most cases, directly related to preventing burnout. They're not directly related to actually helping your people. So, and what I mean by that is that, yes, of course, like, you get these massive surveys, and which happen once or twice a year. And of course, there are takeaways that for the organizations from those surveys, and I'm sure that, and well, I know for a fact that they are also used, but again, it's twice a year is not enough. Like, you need to do it on a continuous basis, and you need to monitor also that the changes that you implemented in your organization, that they actually work and that they actually improve the situation for people. And third thing, which I would suggest, is that, well, actually, it's more of a call to action to people who may be listening. So as I said, I get a lot of people reaching out to me and sharing their stories, and it's really interesting for me, and not only interesting but very useful. So if if you've gone through burnout, or if you're experiencing some adverse symptoms or effects right now, or if you know someone, reach out to me, reach out to us. We want to hear your stories. And I think the world wants to hear your stories as well. Recently, there was really good article. I think it was in Eesti Express or something like that, where where 3 people shared their stories, and I think there needs to be more of that. So reach out, and if you don't want your name under it, because of course it's still a bit of a stigma, and it's still a bit of a topic that maybe is pretty hard to discuss, then you don't need to do it personally. You can also do it anonymously. And we are very happy to share those stories with the wider audience so that burnout would actually start getting the attention and the recognition that I think it deserves.
Yeah, that's like, I'm pretty sure that there are going to be some people reaching out after this podcast. But now I'm just thinking that if Mind and Product tells that there are 80% of product managers that have burnout, what the actual number is, because I'm pretty sure that the rest 20 or the rest 15 and whatnot probably don't really tell or admit that they do have a burnout. Thank you so much for the advices, though. I have a closing question, which is actually not related to burnouts at all. I remember when we were working at Boku and I was drinking coffee after 4 p.m., you were always shocked, surprised, and told this is a very bad idea. By the way, now I'm older, so I stopped doing that. How is it about you? Are you still not drinking coffee after 4?
Well, actually, I've even dialed it back some more. So I'm pretty religious about not drinking coffee after lunchtime. So today, actually, my last cup of coffee was, I think, at 11:30 or something like that. But well, you have always been like more adventurous than I have. So.
Okay, yeah, but I think I'm also changing. Now the cut time probably like 2, 3, but at 6, if I will drink coffee, I will not sleep for sure. Henrik, it was actually a big pleasure to have you here today with us and share everything you know about the burnout. I think I want to call you burnout expert because I think you know a lot and a lot of scientific backup to whatnot you're saying. And thank you so much for sharing and having this conversation with me today.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.